Instead of use this. Alright, so it's perfect. I'll break you down. One, two, three, four, five. It's like this guy here. Everything is being live streamed. Like that, with the lights in a second, and that way it feels better.
Testing. Yeah, question?
What's the live stream?
Live stream, just look up Dotware Games is a YouTube channel with like, I don't know, 56 subscribers and a bunch of Unreal stuff on it. So you want to click the video that says live now, and I'll put this up again, so look for this guy. You'll know you found it if you see this picture. Okay. If it looks like it looks on the board, then you're good. Okay. Have we all found the live stream? No? All right. Sometimes YouTube does a little bit of a delay. So let's try and find it. So I'm typing it in, type in Dotware Games, and then nothing comes up in the search yet. So if I click on the channel itself, we'll see there. Okay, so see, I clicked on the channel itself, and under Uploads, there's something called General Live Stream, and it says Live Now. Okay, so one person got it. So you got to click on the channel, and then in the Upload section, it's the first video. All right. Okay. So does anybody not know how to open Unreal on your computers? Because that'll be our first step. Anybody who wasn't here last time or whatever? Okay. So what you want to do, in case that's you, is on the Mac, there's something called Launchpad. And you want to click on Launchpad and just type in the letter U. And like 3 programs come up. The only one you want to click is the one called UE4 Editor. UE4 Editor. This is out of battery. I don't know if he has any others. Does he have any other double A's? Okay, so I want you to go down to my room, and I have 2 double A's in a box on my desk, kind of on the table, facing out. No, I'd rather have you. Yeah, so yeah, just tell Philippe that
Where's the box?
So there's a white box with all my like audio stuff and it's a bunch of batteries. Yeah, and it's on my desk. So yeah, great. 2 double A's, please. Thank you. Okay, so to launch Unreal, you found UE4 Editor, you clicked it, and you should be looking at an Add a New Project window or an Open Project window. So I'm going to do that right now so everyone can see. So lesson's getting started. To get on my project, I'm going File, New Project, and you should be on something that looks sort of like this. And we're using different versions of Unreal. Mine's a more updated version, so it might look a little different, but you get the basic idea. What I've had you guys do before is a third-person character template. There's all these other templates here that you can use for all kinds of good stuff. What I like is, let's put that on the capture. What I like to do is to take a template and then modify it for my purposes. What kind of game am I making? So for those of you who have me downstairs, I have you make a third-person character, and we turn it into a first-person character by moving the character backwards, right? So things like that. There's great templates here. Vehicle template. One of my favorites is the flying template. So it just starts you off where you have a little map and a character that can fly around, and the controls are all working. Now the best, most objective one is third-person, and that's what we're going to choose today. As usual, make sure that with starter content is checked. So it should say with starter content. If for some reason it says no starter content, make sure you change it to with starter content. And all the other settings are fine. And I'm going to name this, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name mine Level Blueprint Tutorial, because that's what we're going to cover. Actually, it's too long. Okay, we're going to call it Level BP for Blueprint Tutorial. And once you've named it, go ahead and click Create Project. Okay, many of yours are probably still loading. While they load, I'll just explain again, just a refresher on what we're looking at. This center area here, this rectangle where you can see a level, that's called the viewport. That's where all level design happens. How does level design happen? I click on an object and I get these arrows. If I hover over one of these arrows, it turns yellow, so that means it's highlighted, and I can drag that arrow. It'll drag that object along that axis, along that direction. Same goes for rotation. I switch rotation using this toolbar in the upper right. So going from left to right is all these tools. Most of them you don't have to worry about, but these first three you'll use all the time. Press the rotation tool, and now I can highlight these rotation options if I want to rotate objects. And then the third tool is the scale tool, if you did. So if you drag over one of these, it lets you change the size and also the shape in a given direction of any object. Thank you, thank you. So go ahead and try that. Get adjusted with that now. Okay, great, and we have a mic now. So going along this, I've explained this before, but this next box is something you won't be using much, if at all. After that is something called surface snapping. That's really nice because it just means if you move objects in your scene, it acts like they have gravity. They snap to the surface below them. This number 10 here is for grid snapping. Of course, we use it all the time. If I change it to 100, you'll notice when I move an object, it jumps to a new location. It's jumping every 100 units. Units in Unreal are centimeters. Knowing that, you only really know that if you're a 3D modeler or dealing a lot with 3D models. Other than that, things are relative. You know, if you make your character enormous and you make everything else enormous, then it doesn't really matter what size units they're in. Moving over, there's this other thing that's labeled a number 10. This is for scaling your the jumps between rotating. So if I change this to 45 and I try to rotate these stairs, it hops between the different rotations. So that's also really useful for snapping things together. And then over here we have scale, snap. I almost never use that. And then camera speed. So mine's a 4. If I change it up to a 7, I fly like crazy throughout my scene. So sometimes you want to keep that a little bit lower, unless you're using a large world. So how do we move around our scene? Again, I covered this last time, but just a brief overview is as long as you're clicked in your scene, you hold the right mouse button down. You can then move your mouse and look around just by holding right mouse button. Once you've done that, you use your left hand to use the WASD keys, which are basically forward, backward, side to side. Just imagine that they have arrows on them. W goes forward, A goes left, D goes right, S goes backwards. Okay, WASD. Just like a computer game. Most computer games use those controls anyway. And that only works if you're holding down the right mouse button. If I'm not holding it down, it doesn't matter what keys I press. So you're holding down right mouse button whenever you're moving around your world. And then you can let go of it whenever you want to be stationary and move things around. Okay. So that's that. And then we covered the bottom here. This is the content browser. This is where all our files, our materials, right, we drag into our world. Left is modes panel. That's if we're dragging any kind of unique object, any kind of object that has some sort of functionality into our world. Generally, you're going to get that from the modes panel. Details panel is what we use all the time. So just to demonstrate, I'll drag out a point light, right? And the lower bottom here, I have all these settings. Intensity, I turn up the intensity setting, my light goes up. I change the light color setting, the color of my light changes. So any setting of an object is going to be changed in details, which is in the lower right. And then the final panel that I talked about is the world outliner. This is in the upper right. And what this is a list of everything in our scene. Why a list? Well, it's convenient for two reasons. One, if you get lost or you have a lot of things in your scene and you don't know where it is, you find its name, you double click it, and it takes you right to it. The other reason that it's good to have a list is it lets you delete things easy. So usually what I have you do, don't do this, we'll have a daytime scene today, but what I usually have you guys do is I have you type in sky when we're doing a dark nighttime scene. I have you delete the sky, delete skylight, and then I have you type in light, and then I have you delete light source, and then the last thing I do is I have you type in fog and delete fog, and then look at that, it's nighttime. Okay, I'm going to hit Command Z on Macs, Control Z on Windows, and that's going to undo everything I did. So let's say I did all that, or I did some mistake. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Command Z or Control Z will make you step backwards in anything you did. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, and I'm back to normal. If, for example, you're like, no, I didn't mean to Command Z, I want to go forward, Command Y. Command Y, Command Y, Command Y, and I went back forward. So that's really useful. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, that's usually the standard in almost any program. Photoshop works like that. Anything works like that. So anyway, I've got my scene here. And that's our fairly robust overview. Now let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the stuff that you guys are ready to learn. We've dealt with blueprints so far. Can somebody tell me what a blueprint is? It's a general idea, summary. Somebody raise their hand. Yeah, in the back.
It's something attached to an object or a character that gives it code or some sort of meaning that you can mess with.
Yes, absolutely. So it's something that has meaning, right? Something that can be messed with, something that has code. That third definition is the best. It's something that's coded. As far as it being attached to an object, it certainly can be attached to an object, but an object itself can be a blueprint. So in one of my classes, what we did is in this content browser, this is where we create new things in our game that don't exist. I had them click Add New, and they go right here. It's just right near the top. It says Blueprint Class. You click that, and then there's all these different categories. The one you choose 95% of the time is called Actor. You select Actor, and all of a sudden, you have this thing called New Blueprint. If you double-click it, this is your blueprint editor. Okay, it's blank. We haven't added anything to it, but it is its own blueprint. So that's what a blueprinted object is. One class that I had them do is I had them make batteries that the player could pick up that would recharge their flashlight. And we did that with a custom blueprint just like this. We gave it a mesh. That's just a fancy word for a 3D object, so it could look like a battery. We gave it collision so that we could tell the game to remember, hey, when the player collides with this ball, this sphere, then I want you to do some code. And the code was set his battery life variable to 100%, right? We're not going to do that today. Instead, I'm going to show you something that I've never shown any of you, which is the concept behind the level blueprint. This is something that I didn't introduce because it's important that you understand that blueprints can be their own independent objects, and they should be most of the time. However, you have your level where you're designing your level, but you don't really know until you learn this, that the level itself is a coded object that you can add code to. So what I want everyone to do is go ahead and click in the upper middle here on this tab at the top. see the section called Blueprints? Click that, and then click Open Level Blueprint. And then, of course, because you're in my class and we don't have 2 monitors, what we always want to do is when we get a tab like this, you drag the tab up to the next tab, and you don't let go until it expands. That way we can see a full window, and that's the way we could hop between the two. So once you've done that, this should look familiar to those who've done a little bit of blueprint scripting, right? In our horror game tutorial, we coded press F key, turn the light off on, etc., so they could turn on a flashlight. And as far and I don't, we didn't, have we done any? I know I have some of you in my class, but some of you I don't. For those of you who I don't have we never done blueprint coding before? It's important that you answer this so I don't go too fast. So everyone in here has done a little bit of blueprint stuff? A little bit? It's okay if you haven't. I just want to know so that I can pace everything. Okay. All right, so to move around this blueprint graph, you hold down the right mouse button and drag. Okay, you know you're doing it right because your hand turns into your mouse cursor turns into a dragging icon. All right. So what's great about the level blueprint is you'll notice it doesn't have a viewport like our third-person character. I'm going to open up our third-person character blueprint just so you get familiar. We've done a lot of coding on this. This third-person character blueprint comes with code already. This is what it looks like. It's visual scripting, right, in Unreal. And then you have these other tabs, one called construction script. I've not taught you how to do anything on this yet. And if you want a deeper explanation, I can explain it. Just a quick summary of a construction script. It's the same as event graph, except it's for stuff that happens before the game starts, and it's for making scripts that can run while you're in the editor and stuff like that. And then, of course, you have the viewport, which is the physical manifestation of your coded object. So what does your coded object look like? Not all coded objects have a physical manifestation, aka something you can see. Some are invisible and just have code running on it. I showed you that game of mine that I had. For example, I have a coded blueprint in there that's responsible for spawning random events and controlling the weather. But the actual blueprint itself doesn't have anything like this at the viewport you can see because there's no reason. It's just running code. So blueprints can have something you can see and they can have something you can't see. Moving over back to our level blueprint, you notice that we only have one tab. We only have the event graph. We don't have construction script and we don't have a viewport. Well, think of it like this. The viewport is the viewport. It's your level. It's your level's viewport. And what that means is anything in this entire level I have access to. I'll just demonstrate this. Selecting this stair here, with it selected, if I go back to my level blueprint and I right click, at the top here you'll see add event for linear stair static mesh, call function on linear stair static mesh, create a reference to linear stair static mesh. What that means is that I can access it the same way that we accessed our spotlight to create a flashlight on our third-person character, which is really, really incredible because if we're decorating our worlds, and like I had you do last time, right? I had you go create a landscape so we have a more fuller world. If you already know how to do this, you can do this with me. Otherwise, this is a lesson for another time. I'm going to create a landscape real quick. I click on this mountain icon over here. I get all this green stuff. I go down. I leave these settings as they are. That's fine. In the bottom right of this leftmost panel, I hit create, and voila. Right? And then I can start sculpting right away. My favorite method of sculpting is to tap and click, not drag and click, because you get things that are too big. So if I get too big, Command Z or Control Z to go backwards. What I like to do though is I like to add a material to my landscape. So I select my landscape and I can either change it in details or I can find my materials folder down here in content browser. I'm going to choose details. So go down to details, I look for landscape material. It says none. That's why it's all gray and checkerboarded. I click the none drop down and I go find something that looks good for a landscape. ground, grass, or moss always looks good. And then, of course, I delete the 4 walls so that I can move around. And then also what we covered last time is if you hit the play icon, then you can run around in your world like so. And what I like to do personally is I like to hit new editor window, and that way I have my own window that I can see. And once you hit new editor window, if you hit escape, you don't have to hit like that drop down again. You can just keep hitting play, and it remembers your last setting. So I have that little world. So I have my level, and what I'm going to show you today is how to do some level scripting. So knowing that anything I have in this level, I can do stuff with in the level blueprint. That's what's so significant about it, right? Now, for those of us who are in my class where we got to making the batteries, the difference between coding a battery on its own object called blueprint battery and coding it on the level blueprint is basically as follows. If I wanted to have 15 different batteries, I'd have to have the code basically copied 15 different times, 15 different lines of code on this third-person example map. And by code, by the way, I mean the visual scripting we're talking about. I'd have to have 15 different ones. And if I wanted to go up to 20, I'd have to put 5 more down. Now, I could copy and paste my blueprints, no problem. But what if I want to move to another level, right? Most games have more than one level. Well, all of my code that's on the level blueprint stays on that level, right? Now, there are ways to get around this. You can duplicate the level instead of starting a new level from scratch, and then it keeps the code and stuff like that. But it's not a clean way, and it's a complicated way. If you just make your own blueprinted object, like a battery that is responsible for its own code and its own destruction and everything. By destruction, I mean when the player picks it up, it disappears, right? It destroys. That way they can't have this infinite battery source. What's nice about that is you can reproduce that 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Just keep dragging your blueprint battery, the one that you coded once. You coded it one time, created it once, and you can drag it into every level as many times as you want, and not have to deal with any more code than that, right? So if you do it on the level blueprint, that's sort of the difference between doing a custom object that's responsible for its own function and one that's not. Okay. So moving on. Hey, Jonathan, this mic's going out again. Does this? Yeah, it's dying again. Do we have an alternate? Jonathan, do we have an alternate? Because we just put new batteries in, so yeah, it's dying. I turn it on. It stays red for a second. It goes orange. Does he have another mic? All right. Okay, appreciate that. This is gonna be a long day if I can't get that fixed. Okay. So hopefully it'll let me talk for like a couple seconds. No, off. Yeah, it's just burning out. It could be just batteries. So if he has other batteries, we could try. Okay, moving on. Let's create a door that automatically opens. How does that sound? So when your player goes in front of it, it opens like a sci-fi door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Content Browser.
Do you think what batteries the microphone battery?
In the or other microphones, if it's a microphone. So go ahead and Content Browser. There's this button next to Filters. It's on the left of Filters. There's a tiny little icon. Just click that. It's going to expand these folders here so that you can see.
What do you say?
And you want to go to a folder called Starter Content. In the Starter Content, there's two folders that are really cool to open up. One's called Props, and the other one's called Architecture. Okay. So what I'll have you do is go ahead and drag out, go into Architecture. We're going to get a door frame. And I want you to pick Wall Door and drag that into your level. And if you want to hit play and just make sure you can fit through it. No, I can't fit through it. Okay, so probably not the best door.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you, Jonathan. If you can't run through the door, just raise it, right? The blue arrow is what goes up and down. Or scale it so it's bigger. Okay, yeah, now it works. Could have been just on mine because I have grid snapping. I had it set to 100. Yours is probably at 10. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is you've dragged out your wall door into there. And then what I want you to do now is drag out, what do we want? Drag out wall, just one of the walls, and then make it like smaller. And remember, you do that by moving that scale option, that's a third icon on the right, so that it can basically act as our door. So mine's pretty close to door shaped, door size. And then move it into place so that it's right behind the door frame. What I want to do is I want to make a sci-fi effect of a sliding door so that when you get to it, it slides out like that. All right, that would be very cool. And actually, in the spirit of sci-fi, why don't we go to the materials folder and drag out a cool sci-fi material on that. So the best ones for that is you've got this one called metal burnished steel. That's like industrial looking sci-fi. There's one called metal chrome, which is more spaceship looking sci-fi. And then there's these really cool things called tech hex tile. That just that's a phenomenal shader, phenomenal material. Just looks excellent no matter where you put it. And there's even one that has built-in light. So that's what mine's gonna look like. It looks great. Okay. And then even for added decoration, since we're all level designers here now, I'm gonna drag out, and you can do this too. I'm gonna drag out a spotlight, and I'll put the spotlight facing down and sort of pull it up. I'll increase its intensity and details. Yeah, and then maybe its color to like a crazy blue or green. Yeah, I like that. So that's that. And if you wanted to make this a nighttime scene, you could. Actually, no, don't, because I'll show you how to manipulate the sky sphere to make alien-looking worlds and stuff with your sky. So leave that alone. So that's that. What we want to do is we want to make it so that our level blueprint causes that when the player gets close to this, it automatically opens the door, all right, which would be so cool. So to do that, what I want everyone to do is on the left here, in modes panel, type in box, okay, and you get this thing called box trigger, right? And if you hover over, it explains a little bit what it does. It says a box shaped trigger used to generate overlap events in the level. So for those of us who did the flashlight tutorial with the picking up the batteries, that's how we picked up the battery, right? When the player overlapped a certain invisible box or invisible sphere, it triggered the code to recharge the battery. Well, that's what we'll do here. We'll have this invisible box that when the player overlaps it, so walks into it, collides with it, however you want to say it, it moves you trigger the code to move the door to the side. So drag box trigger out and put it right in front of your door. And scale it a little bit on the sides, because just in case your character comes in at an angle or something. I mean, this is actually pretty good, but I'm going to make it so it's a little bit more perfect. So it's right there, is door shaped. And I could even make it taller too, because what if my player jumps, you know, and so the door doesn't open until he's right in front of it. And then maybe I want to make it longer, or maybe not even longer, but just drag it in front of the door a little bit, because I want the door to start opening a little bit before the player can even get to it, right? Okay, so that is a box trigger. Now, with the box trigger selected, So that means it's highlighted, and if you clicked off of it, all you gotta do is click it again. Okay, now it's highlighted. Go to your level blueprint. Go to the level blueprint. And right click, and like I said, the level blueprint can access anything in your level. And whatever you've selected, it knows it should be currently accessing. So if you right click, you'll see it says add event for trigger box 1 is what mine's called. So click the little arrow, drop down on add event for trigger box, and it's going to open a few more categories. Then click the little arrow next to collision, and then you'll see 3 events that have to do with collision. One of them is add on actor begin overlap, and that's what we want. So click add on actor begin overlap. And you get a red event, looks like this. And you know you've done it right because it's going to say on actor begin overlap, and then in parentheses it's going to say the thing you're overlapping. So mine says trigger box. Now, in any overlap event, you always have this tab here that says other actor. That just means, hey, what are you overlapping? Because more than likely, your trigger box or anything that has a collision is overlapping a bunch of stuff in your scene all the time. It's overlapping the floor, it's overlapping the other door, it's overlapping the wall, it's overlapping lights, okay? So you need to specify what is the other thing it's overlapping, which in this case, we want it to be the character. So left click and drag off of that other actor circle. It'll give you this blue wire, and then let go. And in this new context menu that comes up, type in cast to third person. You want to find the one that says third person character and click that. Now, this is a good moment for us to do a little bit of debugging, so a development aid, so that we know that our code's working, that all of this is as it should be. So again, the best way I like to test that sort of thing is to drag off of, to drag a new wire. You do that with that sideways triangle at the top. Drag off of there, and type in print string. Print string, all it means is it's a word. Send a word to the screen that we can see, and then we know. The player doesn't see this, so if you're to build the game, they're not going to see this, but us as developers can see it. And it just says hello. You could leave it as that. I'm going to actually type in something specific, which is box was overlapped. And what should happen is if I hit play, and then I walk over this trigger box, it's going to check if the third person character collided, and then it's going to print box was overlapped if it's successful. And then we'll know our code's working, and then we can move forward. So go ahead and hit play and see how that works. Okay, so mine works. So it says box was overlapped in the left. I'll walk back over to it again, you'll see. So I'll walk over and it says box was overlapped. It's in blue. So that much of our code is working. Now we just got to get the door to open. So I'm going to hit escape. And moving over, what I want to do is let's actually go to our map again, so our viewport, and select the door. So that wall, that shape that you made door size, just click on it. Now it's highlighted. You can reference it in your blueprint. So go back to your level blueprint, right click, and you see it says add event, call function, and then the third option right here is create a reference. It should be called, like, mine's called wall underscore 500 x 500. That's fine. Whatever the thing you're having be your door is going to be whatever it's called. You can see its name and details. If you want to change the name and details, you can right here. So I'm going to do that. So I can be more specific. I'm going to name it door underscore 01. Okay. And the blueprint's going to know that. So if you right click, it's going to say create a reference to door underscore 01. And we're going to do that create reference. So if you've named it, whatever, go back to your blueprint, right click, and we're not doing add event, we're not doing call function, we're doing that third one that says create a reference. So click that, and you see it, and it says like from persistent level or something. So what this means is we can access any of the properties of the door. So if I drag off of this door, the circle, anything about the door I can change. Now, the door doesn't have much functionality, but it does have stuff we can change. So let's go back to our map, and I want you to select your door and take a look at the details panel and look at location, okay? And I want you to take a look at the red location for X, all right? So it's you can see it's a red color and it's a red arrow, but it's for X. And with your door selected, drag and watch that number change. Drag in the direction that you want the door to open. So if I were doing that, when my door is completely closed, it says location is -860, okay? And if I drag it to the fully open position, it says the new location is -740. So what we got to do is just tell our code to send the door from being in its original location to this new one called -740. So you're going to have a different number depending on where you dragged your door. And you might even have a different arrow. It might be Y for you, right? For some of you, you might want it to be a sci-fi door that opens upwards. Okay, that would be the blue one. So whichever one that you want, be it X, Y, or Z, these are the directions that an object can be in. You want to find out, okay, where is it at when it starts, and especially where is it at when it ends. So for me, I said I was going to go with the X, so we'll do X. So I'm going to go from, it's going to be like a sliding door, from -860 to -740. So remember your number. I'll remember mine. Okay. Then move the door back to where it's supposed to be, and let's hop into the code. So drag off of this get door, or this, yeah, it's called, if you ever see a reference to something, it's basically called a get. So you hear me go, oh, it's a get, but drag off of that blue circle and type in, type in location. You need to do location or transform, let's see. So let's do get actor location. And you'll see on this return value, it's like a gold yellow looking thing. Okay, and if you hover over it, it says return value vector, right? Vector is a fancy, fancy word that makes you sound really smart when you say it for a 3-number set, right? X, Y, and Z. That's a vector. So you can go ahead and right-click on that return value, that circle that says return value, and click split struct pin. Okay, and it's going to open up all the different values. So then you can see return of X, Y, Z. Now next what I want you to do is go ahead and move this sort of down and out of the way. Drag off of a door again and type in set actor location. And there's a bunch of different ones. Right now we're going to deal with set actor, just the one that says set actor location. So not relative. Okay. Now on this one that says new location, go ahead and right click on that circle, that golden circle, and hit split struct pin. And what you want to do here is you want to connect the two numbers that you aren't changing into each other, right? So if you're moving your door up and down, you want to connect X to X and Y to Y so that they stay the same. But you want to leave Z alone because Z is up and down. I'm going to be leaving X alone, so I'm going to break these pins. By the way, to break a pin, you can either hold Alt and click, or you could right click if it's connected and you're like, I want to get rid of it, right click and hit break link and it'll break it. So for me, I am going to connect Z to Z, I'm going to connect Y to Y, those wires, and X I'm going to leave alone because I want it to go from my number that the X starts with to the new number that X should be in, and this is going to cause the door to move. Okay. Now that you have that, go ahead and move this code over to the side because we want to put something in between, basically something that comes after our print string but before our set actor location. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to do something called a timeline. So drag off of print string and type in the word timeline. And then click the thing that says add timeline. Timelines are really, really useful for like a whole bunch of things. And what we want to do is go ahead and connect that end of timeline that says update into the set actor location. So connect update into the set actor location. This code doesn't do anything yet. Because we have to do something to our X value. We have to do or Z value depending wherever you're moving your door. And what we have to do is we need to gradually progress it to the new location. We can't just type in, I mean you could, so see how it says set actor location? For me it was my door when it's fully open, it's at what? It's at 740, okay? You don't want to just type in 740 into the new location for X, because if I do that, it's just gonna pop into the new location. I'll just demonstrate that. If I hit play, I walk over to my thing, it's gonna trigger in a second. It's gonna jump. Oh, actually, it didn't jump at all. What did I do wrong? Oh, okay. So by the way, make sure you select your door, and in its details panel, there's something called mobility. Make sure it's set from static to movable. Okay. And if you don't do that now, that you can do that later. But no, actually do it now. Go to your viewport, click your door, make sure it's set from in the mobility. That's like 4 options down in its details panel, right underneath scale, in the transform tab, and make sure it's set to movable. So the point I was making though, and I'll demonstrate that, is if I run over this door, it's going to just pop into the new location. It's not going to go gradual. So you just popped over, okay? I'll do that again. Okay, so that's not the effect we want. It just shoots over to the new location. We want it to flow that way, gradually, right? That's why I had you bring out the timeline. So the timeline is a great way for making a number increase or decrease over time, just like it sounds. So anyway, your code should look like this so far. You have this door, you get actor location, you've connected the numbers that you're not going to be changing into this new set actor location. You've left alone the one number you are changing, and in timeline, we're going to create that number that gradually goes up. So go ahead and let's see. Let me think for a second. So what I want you to do is double click on your timeline, and it's going to open this thing. And in the top here, you have all these different buttons and options that are really cool. You have like a color track, right? Because you can change colors in timeline, event track, vector track. All we're going to do is do the first option called float track. Click add float track. And it's called new track _ 0 or something. That's okay, that's fine. And what we want to do is we want to, see, I had to think for a second because there's a couple ways we can do this. And that's the one thing about programming. There's always 12 ways of doing something, minimum, right? And then it's the question is, well, what's the right way, or what's the easiest way, or what's the cleanest way? So what I've decided is we're going to do something called a lerp node, which sounds complicated. It's not, but we're going to add one more node, one more piece of blueprint after this, and then it should work. But this will make this timeline part a little bit simpler, because all we're going to do is we're going to make our timeline go from 0 to 1. 0 to 1. So what we want to do is we want to add a number here. To do that, you hold Shift and click anywhere on the graph. Okay. Shift and click, and you get this like diamond-looking thing. Okay. That's a number. And with it selected, you'll notice that you now have these options sort of near the top that say time and value. Right? If you don't have it selected, you won't see it. Make sure it's selected so it's yellow. And you say time and value. So go ahead and change time to 0 and value to 0. And that ends up sending the diamond right to the very beginning of the whole timeline at exactly the center point between what would be positive numbers on top and negative numbers at the bottom. And then what I want you to do is anywhere else in the graph, go ahead and hit Shift and click again to add our second number. And with that number selected, we want to change its time to 1 and its value to 1. Okay. All we're saying is in the time that it takes to do 1 second, go from 0 to 1. So it's going to play from 0 over the course of an entire second to 1. You can change this time to 0.5 if you want to be faster, to 10 if you want to take 10 seconds to open your door. Right? That's why the time part is valuable. That's why it's so powerful. Okay. That's all we got to do for that. That's all we got to do for the timeline. So go ahead and click the Event Graph tab. So we're back on our event graph. And if you take a look at your timeline, you'll see that the number has an option now on timeline. Mine's called new track 0, right? Because we didn't really name it. If you want to name it, again, you can just right-click, rename, back in the timeline. I'm going to leave mine at the way it is, though. So event graph new track 0. Okay. So I did say we were going to add one more node here. So go ahead and move the set actor location over just a little bit so we have some more room. And then drag off of update. Even though update's connected to set actor, that's fine. Drag off of update and type in LERP, lerp. Okay, and the lerp doesn't come up for me. So to fix that, you have this thing called context sensitive on the right. And you can uncheck that. And you want the one that says lerp that's under the float category. By the way, what's a float? What's that? I heard an answer. Yeah?
It's words.
It's words? No, string is words. Yeah, unless you mean it's the it clown saying, yes, they float. Oh, yes, they float. No, don't get the reference? Okay. No, a float. You want to take another stab at it? Float.
It's not numbers.
It is numbers, and it's a certain type of number. Decimal, that's right, Jonathan got it. It is a decimal number. That's all a float is. It stands for floating point. Why do you need numbers to have decimals? Why can't you just call them all numbers, right? Well, my example for this is you can have 1.5 apples, but you can't have 1.5 humans, right? Bad. So you choose lerp, and you get something that looks like this. And it should look like A, B, and this thing called alpha, and it has a return value. That's the lerp you should be getting, okay? And if for some reason it didn't come up, instead of dragging off and looking for it, you could right-click anywhere on the graph and type in lerp. And you just want the one under the float category, right? That's the decimal category. Now, it's real simple, this part. All we got to do is go ahead and connect the thing from your timeline, the thing that's called new track or whatever, connect that into the alpha. So you're connecting that into the alpha of your lerp. And then for A, we want to do our door's original location. So this thing called return value x, drag off of that. And then for me, it's x, okay? If you're doing an up and down door, it's y. It's whatever directional number, either x, y, or z, you didn't already connect into set actor location. So mine's x, so I'm dragging that, I'm gonna put that in A, okay? So connect that to A. And there's like 2 more steps, guys, okay?
I'm left behind.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll come by because we're almost there, and I'll look at your stuff individually, okay? And what's great, guys, is I leave this stuff up on YouTube, so you can go back and study it and find out what I did. So we have this B channel. What I want you to do is go ahead and take a look back at your door, if you don't remember it, and just find that number for its opened position. So for me, if I leave my door completely opened, my X number is -740. I'm just going to Command C to copy that, or I can remember it and type it in. And then I want to move my door back into its original position. And in that B number, I'm going to put my new number, whatever that opened position number is. So mine's -40, so I paste it in -40 to the B there. Okay, final step, return value on lerp, right? The end of lerp, connect that into the thing that says new location on set actor location. Now that was a lot, guys. Fingers crossed it works, right? I'm gonna go ahead and test mine.
I don't see lerp.
So if you don't see lerp, you need to right click somewhere and then type in lerp. If you drag off an update, lerp's not going to come up because it doesn't know you're trying to use a lerp. So right click anywhere and type in lerp, L-E-R-P. I'm gonna go hit play. Let's see. Mine might not work, and if mine doesn't work, then we'll have to go back. But let's see. Hopefully it moves over in the course of a second. All right, ready? Here's the moment of truth. Yeah. Oh, I like that. All right, I'm gonna do that again. That was great. So mine worked. So I'm gonna walk over and opens like a charm. Now if that's too fast, remember you can go into this timeline and you can double click it and you can change that end number in time. Instead of it being 1, I'm gonna change it to 2. Now it's gonna be a much slower opening door. If I hit play, make my window big, if I hit play, walk over, and voila. Okay. How would you get it to close again, though, I was asked? Well, timeline is a really nifty thing in the front here called reverse, and reverse from end. So I could make, to reverse, a custom event, and I could call it close door, and I could have that event trigger the reverse. And then I'll just call this event whenever I want to. So let's say I make some door trigger on the other side of this or something, so that when I cross over it, it calls the close event. Make sure I have the box trigger selected. I heard a yes in the back. Good. Okay, so I just attempted a way of closing the door. So for those of you who are interested, I'm gonna hit play on that. That's what that code looks like. I made a custom event by adding custom event, right click, add custom event. I turned that into the reverse, and then I made a new trigger on the other side of the door that says close door. So fingers crossed, I hit play, let's see. The door should open and then close once I get to the ending part. Oh, it didn't work. Wait, it didn't work? Oh, you know, I think it didn't work because we're reversing it, but we want to, there's a couple ways we could do this. We could turn our timeline into a negative number by multiplying it by 1. Oh, I know what I did. See, this stuff happens all the time. I didn't check my other actor. I didn't cast a third-person character like I should have. If you don't do that, your overlap event's just not going to fire. No. What the? So there are other ways we can close the door. Since this reverse isn't working, what I would end up doing is I would just do, in this new chain of events, I would get my new track information, and then I'd do the multiply, and I'd multiply it by a -1, which is going to make the entire float track go negative, and then I'd lerp that into my new number. But I don't want to cloud this graph. And anyway, that was just answering a question. So I'll leave this. This is what your code should look like. And yeah, let me come by and see whose doors are opening. And with that, I'm going to conclude the live stream, so you can go back and see that code to make sure it works.